load and fire this 3 times a minute, doing it the long way. You kill a man at 900 yards with no trouble at all. Excellent weapon. Fire the cartridge like this, paper cartridge, greased on the outside, powder in the centre, on the top I should say, and the bullet is a hollow base bullet at the bottom. Just lead, that's what it's made from. Now what they did, they just tore off the top of the cartridge, pour the powder in, drop the rest of it straight down the barrel. Being greased, it acts as a lubricator for the rifling, and then you rammed it home using the rammer. As you rammed it, like that on top of the bullet, the base of the bullet opened up into the rifling. Of course when you fired it, it opened up even more. Then you put a percussion cap on there, like so. This is the military percussion cap, got a little flange on it, so once the gun's been fired and it recocks, you can just flick that off with your thumb. It's all for speed really. A civilian percussion cap is just smooth edged. Okay, it's a live one so I won't fire that. Set it up 900 yards and away you go. Bang. So a good rifleman, 3 rounds a minute. Now if you were being attacked by an enemy and they come in a couple of thousand of them racing across the field at you, obviously you're going to run out of time, you won't be able to do that. So what they did, they just got the cartridge, top off, pour the powder in, drop the rest of the cartridge in, bang it on the deck, up, cap on, fire. Wouldn't go as far, wouldn't be so accurate, because you'll fire it, but it wouldn't go into the rifling until you got about this far up the barrel, before it started to turn, so it'd be inaccurate. But at a couple of 100 yards you got hit by a bullet, which was a .577, you'd really know about it. So it was quite effective. When you get about 5 rounds a minute, probably it might even be quicker. If you watch Sharp on the television, they do that with their Baker rifles. Not a good idea with a Baker rifle. Now, the reason we had so many of these weapons, there's 380 of these rifles, is because no one would take our Navy on at sea, it's far too powerful. So we used to send them ashore, send the sailors ashore as naval brigades. The Royal Navy, we really were the biggest hooligans under the sun. Victoria's military, and they took on anybody and everybody, no matter who they were, including the Maoris, and duffed them up. And they duffed them up using this type of rifle and one of these things. This is a cutlass bayonet. It's a slashing weapon. Sharpened down that side, the full length, and this end there, and you use it thus. And this is very, very blunt, this one. If I hit someone across the neck with it, I'll take their head off. It's very, very, very heavy, and a very fine weapon indeed. You hit someone with one of these, he really stays hit, which is the object of exercise. If you're ashore defending a gun emplacement, the enemy's coming towards you, as I just described, eventually you're not going to have time to load this, so you stick it on the end, and you've got a pike. And I guarantee you, if you land on the end of that, it's going to ruin your day. Okay, so that's a cutlass bayonet and a Lee Enfield muzzle loading rifle .577. You've got 100 of these in the ship, one in every gun bay, and 32 down there for the officers to use in the afterguard. This is a US Navy Colt 36, 1851 pattern, made in London from 1851 to 1857. Samuel Colt had a factory in Pimlico where he made these things. Not a bad weapon, kill a man at 50 yards, kill a man at 150 yards if he was very lucky, but more chance of him being knocked down by a bus than being hit by one of these. Unless you threw it at him, you might just get it. But the trouble with all these black powder weapons was the length of time it took to load, and this is no exception. Powder into the chamber, then the lead ball went on top, and then it was rammed home using the rammer, which is under this little piston here under the barrel. You ram it home tight with that. Load 5 rounds, then you put grease over the face of each chamber. If you didn't do that, the explosion from the first chamber would set off all the other ones and probably remove a couple of your fingers, which is something you wouldn't forget to do the second time. Percussion cap on the back of the weapon, and you put the hammer to rest on an empty chamber. That's your only safety device on one of these things. Leave one chamber empty. This is a 6-shooter. Okay, so we loaded 5, 1 empty. If you load all 6 and you drop this, all the weight's down this end. It's going to land that way up probably. 9 times out of 10 it will, and it's going to go off. And you're going to be talking with a very high squeaky voice. And you'll be saying to yourself, oh, you hadn't done that. So, for safety's sake, being a prudent owner, you load 5, 1 empty. Saying all that, I'll now contradict it. If the ship went into action, the gun captain of this weapon would go down below, get the wherewithal to prime that. He'd load 6 rounds into this and put it in the rack overhead, up there, As you can see, two wooden plates with hooks on, that's where the pistols lived. You'll see quite a few of them through the ship. And he'll forget all about it. Obviously it doesn't matter about the 6 rounds because he's not going to run around with it. Off they go to fight the enemy, and in the unlikely event of an enemy vessel coming alongside and them trying to board in through the gun port, if they did, one of the gun's crew would take the pistol down. His job then would be to eliminate the first 6 through there. He'd throw it at the 7th guy, he'd probably catch it and throw it back, no good to him. Once you fire this thing, all it's good for is banging nails. No good for anything else, it takes too long to load. So, once he's fired his 6 rounds, he would revert to one of these, which is a far more efficient weapon. It doesn't go off by accident when you drop it, never misfires, and as long as this bit of your arm's functioning, this will work. 4 of these in each gun bay. You're still defending it from the enemy, just long enough for this gun's crew, or the remainder of the gun's crew, to load this weapon. Now, if there's droves of guys trying to come through here, they wouldn't even bother to put a projectile in it. They just put a 14-pound bag of black powder in there and fire it. That'll atomise anyone out here about 12 feet. And once your enemy's been atomised, they lose interest rapidly. So you don't have to worry about them too much. As I say, there's 4 of these in each gun bay. Now this is slightly different from those. This is as you can see by the shape of it, this is a slashing weapon. Sharpened down that side and this side again, just like the bayonet. So you use it thus. It's got BO stamped in it, showing that it's been issued by the Board of Ordnance. Okay? They issued all weapons for the Army and Navy in the 1800s. These cutlasses up here are stabbing cutlasses, nice and straight. You couldn't slash anything on one of those, absolutely useless. These are modern ones, we got them from the Navy about 8 years ago. Last time they were used for real was in 1954 when a British minesweeper went aboard a Chinese pirate junk with handguns and cutlasses and took it. The Chinese gave up very quickly, just proving that they didn't like it up them. Okay? So that's the cutlass. They're also used when HMS Cossack boarded the Altmark in 1939. If any of you remember that. But it never gets mentioned in the newsreels. I think they must have thought it was a bit barbaric. I don't know how you could be more barbaric than the German socialists, I'm sure, but still, there you are. Now, also on this ship we had 118 Royal Marine artillerymen. Now their main job was to fire the after battery on this ship, which was in the afterguard down there behind the armour bulkhead. It consisted of 4 68-pounder smoothbores and 2 110-pound muzzle breech loading rifle guns. Okay, and they also did sentries on the rifle racks and the spirit room and captain's cabin all over the place. Kept them busy, kept them out of mischief. Also down there they kept their rifles. The same rifles as these, but they had white slings purely for ceremonial purposes, and they had this type of bayonet. This is called a yataghan bayonet or sword bayonet. Now you couldn't give a Royal Marine artilleryman a great big bayonet like that. He'll only hurt himself. So you give him a little one. You can't fire a rifle with this on the end, but you can with that one. That's why it's that shape. Okay? So, Royal Marine artillerymen. Underneath their rifle racks, there's some lockers. You'll see them when you go down there. And that's where they kept their ready-use ammunition. So if the balloon went up, all of a panic, like the sharpshooters get straight down there, fill their weapons, powder and shot, get aloft or ashore, get amongst the enemy, without having to waste time waiting for the main magazines to be opened up. Okay. Also, if there was a mutiny, they were here to defend the officers from the crew, which is most unsporting, and so they didn't want the seamen controlling their powder and shot, of course, so they had their own supply aft. Okay, so it's Royal Marine artillery.